Alright, today is a happy video, an upbeat summary of a multi-year saga where the end result is that a group of people who are very passionate about a particular video game franchise get to play the game that they love with a new and thriving community. It's a good thing, I'm happy for them, and it's great to see Titanfall 2 making headlines again for all the right reasons, but something a lot of people might not know is precisely where it came back from. See, Titanfall 2 and its predecessor, the original Titanfall, are inextricably linked to the story of an infamous Blackhat hacker going by the moniker John Yu. In truth, to this very day, no one even knows if that's his real name, or if it's even a he or an individual in the first place. But the story of Titanfall 2 and its heartwarming community rebirth of sorts could never be complete without the history of a figure commonly referred to as John Yu. Right now, Titanfall 2 is sitting at over 20,000 concurrent players on Steam. That's an enormous increase, a revitalized player base, but a couple of years ago, at John Yu's apparent sole discretion, the game couldn't even be played. This is where I need to set the stage a little bit. The story of how we got here and the characters involved is hundreds of pages long. The time required to explore and catalog it all is best measured in months, not days or weeks, and as a result, I have to rely on personal summary. There's a playlist linked down below containing far more information going all the way back to May of 2021, the lore of it all, if you will. But for this video, I'll keep it refined and rather concise. Let's go back to the beginning. The original fan favorite game, Titanfall, is now dead. Why? Because a hacker, John Yu, managed to kill it. Origin story aside, since the reality of who he is or why he does what he does has never been definitively proven, John Yu managed to create what he called the atomic bomb. The atomic bomb, contrary to its namesake, was not physical, it was digital. John Yu created a sophisticated network of bot accounts that would infiltrate and fill every existing public lobby for the game Titanfall, subsequently crashing them through a variety of methods, rendering it almost completely unplayable for actual users. That alone, by itself, is an impressively troubling feat, but that was just the beginning. What followed became a story of community civil war. John Yu turned his sights to Titanfall 2 and began constructing a new system aimed at rendering the sequel unplayable as well. His calculated efforts led to a new threat, the Blacklist, and while the effects of that blacklist still fell short of total destruction, the impact it did have was far from small. See, the Blacklist would knock entire matchmaking lobbies of the game offline. Instead of being playable, players would see their ping start to rise dramatically and then lose connection. But the Blacklist was not some script kiddie or a typical disgruntled player with access to just a few $1,000s of hardware and some YouTube tutorials. No. The Blacklist was a sophisticated and targeted method of shutting off a player's connection despite any known countermeasure. VPN did not work. New Origin account did not work. Community mod to hide the identity of players in the entire lobby or switching platforms completely? No results. And as time went on, it started to become clear that John Yu, whoever they really were, had frightening levels of insider access to the server infrastructure of Titanfall 2. Later on, I'm going a little bit out of order here, this isn't strictly speaking chronological right now, but it felt like the proper time to mention it. In response, and worthy of commendation by the way, the community came up with a pseudo-solution. That solution was the North Star client, a work of passionate creativity and significant expertise that allowed the player base to persist, in a way, and keep playing, despite a total lack of acknowledgement or support from Respawn directly. North Star allowed players to matchmake, it allowed them to continue playing, and breathe life back into the game in a way that deserves to be highlighted. However, this is where things get very complicated. See, when you abandon a game community to their own devices, when you leave them out in the cold for a long period of time with a product that can't be played properly and a ruthless hacker dominating the servers, things start to fall apart. What started in the original Titanfall, a series of attacks that successfully killed the game outright, had evolved into the sequel, Titanfall 2. But now the chaos began to spill over into Apex Legends. Seemingly organized inside a prominent Titanfall 2 community Discord server, a group of individuals discovered and then leveraged an exploit in the Apex Legends infrastructure, rendering the entire game unplayable for a short period of time as a publicity stunt. While the game servers were down, the main menu was hijacked and a redirect was offered to savetitanfall.com. But as the scale of these exploits continued to grow, so did the relative chaos. Apex Legends is a marquee product for EA Games. What managed to fly under the radar, kind of, for Titanfall and Titanfall 2 was now center stage for a multi-billion-dollar company, and things were about to implode. Scrutiny began to rise, a lot more people got involved, and suddenly, miraculously, a 40-page document was released called Operation Red Tape. This document exposed the identity of the group responsible for hacking into Apex Legends and offering the redirect to savetitanfall.com, and caused broader uproar in the community. The document featured a large number of Discord screenshots, a huge amount of reframed context, and crafted a narrative that this coalition of hackers, if you will, had manufactured the stunt in order to push Respawn into giving them further access to Titanfall 2's infrastructure. In essence, the claim was that this hack was part of a bid to revive a long-standing community project called Titanfall Online, and the accusation was that a community member named P0358, commonly known as Poe, had engineered it all, because he was the real John Yu. Well, true to form, nothing is ever as simple as it seems with this story, and the picture changed once again, because of course it did. See, it turned out that one of the primary architects behind this 40-page document called Operation Red Scare had secretly been organizing, collaborating, and advocating with that very same group of hackers, asking them to add the redirect to advertising-savetitanfall.com, asking them to look for additional exploits, even discussing that they should specifically target console players, expand the scope of their hacks, and even retroactively apply those hacks to damage Titanfall 2. Basically, one of the central figureheads responsible for unmasking the Apex Legends hackers had been extensively coordinating with those very same hackers. Now, I did speak to this individual, and their claim is that they were only fishing for information. I figured I'd put that in there. But my opinion, it doesn't look that way, leaving the entire situation ultimately in a state of open confusion as to who was actually doing what and why in pursuit of this still unknown ultimate agenda. Flash forward, and a final document is eventually released. This one, titled Cutting Through the Red Tape, was a multi-hundred-page response to the prior expose, refuting, undermining, and attempting to disprove the various different claims. In reality, it mostly just manipulated context because the interwoven web of connections between these community members is nearly impossible to decipher. To this very day, I don't know who John Yu is. I know who I'm supposed to think it is, and there's a pretty substantial amount of evidence indicating as such, including private correspondence, court documents, personal records, etc. But for the sake of transparency, I never had enough to pull the trigger and say a name. I never found the smoking gun or the piece of irrefutable evidence, and I never managed to get an actual interview with them. I've probably spoken to John Yu unknowingly over the course of this, at least once or twice over the span of all these events. This is actually one of the largest stories I've ever worked on in the channel's entire history, including probably 60 or so people I've discussed with, maybe more, and an unknown number of hours spent on it. But at the end of the day, John Yu is just a name, an identity, and an infamous persona that has managed to impact an entire AAA franchise for years, killing one of the games outright, crippling another for a significant period of time, and spawning controversy across multiple mainstream gaming publications in his wake. As far as video game characters go, John Yu appears to be a real-life, very nebulous villain. A fascinating one. Still, all of that and the story itself manages to have a happy ending if you can believe it. Respawn has updated Titanfall 2. They have fixed, so they claim, the constant disconnections and the issues that rendered the game pretty much unstable for the majority of users. And they've also pushed out an update that gives cryptic hints at something maybe coming in the future. A lot of players are hopeful that this could mean Titanfall 3. I mean, that's a fan favorite. Everybody wants that. Others are just grateful to have renewed attention on their favorite shooter, but regardless of why it happened or where it goes in the end, the community has expanded, the player count has risen, and the game is finally receiving attention after years of pain and suffering. Titanfall 2 was always a hidden gem. It got great feedback initially, the players loved it, but the game failed, quote-unquote, at launch from a numbers perspective because of unknown reasons. Maybe it was launch window, time frame, maybe it was marketing, I don't know. But seeing it revived now, reaching nearly an all-time high concurrent player count on Steam, that's a happy ending. That's the way it should be. And it's good to know that Respawn has finally done something to help and pull the community back from the brink, because that community was on the brink. All of it remains fascinating to me. A wonderful game, a passionate community, an impressively skilled antagonist, and chaos ensuing as a result. But with new attention from Respawn and a lack of activity from John Yu, at least nothing I could find anymore recently, it feels like the proper end of a story. A long story, and one that had its fair share of twists and turns, to say the very least, but an interesting story, and one that was a pleasure to tell. That's it. If you want to check out Titanfall 2, be my guest. I'll put a link for it right down below in the description. It's an excellent game that's worthy of your time. For everyone else, there are other links as well, like Patreon, locals, and channel memberships. Also a full playlist, of course, for this entire thing. It's like a couple hours of content in total, I think. I have some new merchandise products coming soon, or like a project thing with a partner, whatever. A couple bigger updates behind the scenes, hopefully soon, and more, but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.